Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my channel Colin. Today I'm doing my much delayed last batch wrap up of Arthur C. Clarke Award winners. This video was supposed to be done about 18 months ago. I did most of this project, most of the reading for it in 2017, and then for some reason when I had like 5 or 6 books left, I just stopped reading things after like February of 2018. And it's probably a good thing that I took that time off. I think I was starting to stress myself out about pushing to read things when I didn't really feel about it. But even then, this video is so overdue. So let's get into it. Let's start with the 3 books that I have DNF'd. In total, I have not finished 6 books for this project, and there's only one of those that I think I'll ever come back to. So first of them is Iron Council by China Mieville. This is either the 2nd or 3rd book in his fantasy Spacial series, and it's the one world, the one series by Mieville that I just cannot. I describe my internal reaction to it as an allergic reaction, like my brain is reacting allergically to the story, to the world. I had that problem with the first book, Perdido Street Station, which is also actually a Clarke Award winner. I read that like 5-6 years ago, and it's the book that broke me of finishing every book that I started. So when I started reading Iron Council, I was really worried that I'd have that same experience, and it happened all over again, and I said, nope, I just can't. I adore other books by Mieville, but not the Spacial novels. Next, I DNF'd The Separation by Christopher Priest, and this is the one book that I think I will come back to at some point and try again and probably get through it successfully. Once again, I didn't get super far into this to really tell you what I thought the plot was going to be, but it was essentially alternate history World War II fiction featuring twin brothers, and I was just really bored by it. I was trying to make myself read it when I wasn't interested, I think, in really reading anything at all, and I personally am not fond of books or stories set in World War II, especially if they're about like feet on the ground soldiers in the war doing things, and at least one of the brothers in the story was like a fighter pilot during the war, and it was kind of about that. And I ultimately put it down because I was bored, but also I felt like I didn't know enough or care enough about the timeline of history during World War II to really understand to pick out the alternate events in the story. However, I found it relatively easy to read, and I think that if I came back to it in a different mindset without the pressure of this project on me or whatever, I would probably finish reading it. So if this book ever appears in like the SF Masterworks line, I'll get a copy and I'll read it. And the last DNF is one that I retried very recently, and that is The Child Garden by Geoff Ryman. I originally stopped reading this over a year ago, and I knew I would come back to it because I was pretty sure it was me and not the book. When I started reading this book again, I was reading a different edition of it that had a really interesting introduction about the book and its themes and kind of what the metaphor of it all is. It made it really interesting, and I felt like I was reading a completely different book. I was really excited about it, I was really into it, and then about 1/3 of the way through it, it just abruptly lost me again. I like Ryman's writing. I read one of his other books called Air for this project, and I thought it had such interesting ideas, good character work, good writing, but slipped into some bizarre stuff by the end. I mean, Air has this crazy, fantastical, improbable pregnancy storyline in it that I think I ranted about at one point. The Child Garden started to kind of weird me out because it felt like Winnie the Pooh for adults and kind of surreal. In fact, Winnie the Pooh is even referenced in it. And it just got to this point where characters were doing things and the relationship was so weird, some of the world building was so weird, I just couldn't handle it anymore. I did give this one a really good shot. I mean, I tried reading it twice, I got 1/3 of the way through it, and I felt like I had grasped what the story was like and that it just wasn't going to get radically better for me by the end, so I let that one go. Would still be interested in reading other things by Ryman, just I probably won't return to this particular book. Now on to the books that I actually finished reading to finish out this project. The first one is one book that I did read a year and a half ago and never talked about because I thought I would be doing this video a year and a half ago. And that book is Take Back Plenty by Colin, Greenland. I did not like this book. I don't remember very much about it. It had one of those very cliche, strong female protagonists flying her spaceship around, getting in trouble, etc. Space adventure type of thing. I remember feeling like it was very cliche and very dated even for the time in which it was published, but mostly I thought it was really badly written. I mean, I was astounded when I discovered that this book won in the year that both Use of Weapons by Iain M. Banks was nominated and The City Not Long After by Pat Murphy. Like, either of those two would have been so much better than just, I sometimes don't understand why certain books win. But I think this is a perfect example of a book that was probably exciting when it was published, but just has not withstood the test of time. It has aged very badly, and once again, I thought the writing in it was really bad. So yeah. The last three are ones that I've read very recently, so I actually have decent thoughts on them. The first one is Dreams Before the Start of Time by Anne Charnock. This is a multi-generational story spanning about 100 years that explores how artificial womb technology and innovations in conceiving and reproducing affect people's relationships and their desire to have children and the way in which they can have children. I loved the basic idea of this. I think that artificial reproduction technologies are really interesting in science fiction. I mean, that is one of the key technology plot drivers in Loisig Master Bujold's Vorkosigan saga, and I love how she uses that. So maybe I was expecting something kind of similar in Dreams Before the Start of Time, but it was more superficial, more fast, just kind of glossing over things pretty quickly instead. And I thought it touched on a lot of permutations of relationships and families and children, but I never got to know any of the characters very well because there were so many of them and most of them really only got a chapter or two. And you would see some people at different stages in their life. Like, I think Tilly, is Tilly her name, was one that was introduced early on and you kept kind of coming back to her as a core character. So I enjoyed her parts of the story. I felt like I actually got to know her. But then there are all these other ancillary people that I kept getting confused by the end. And it definitely felt more literary than science fiction in that, while it's kind of exploring relationships, the actual technology and what's going on in the world, it seems like a very background detail most of the time, and I wanted it to be a bit more front and center. So this was an enjoyable read. I think I will definitely try reading more by Charnock in the future, but I really did feel like it was a bit too superficial for me, and I expected more meat on those bones. Song of Time by Ian R. MacLeod. This is one that I started reading and thought I would utterly love. It was written so beautifully, and then the ending, which kind of incorporates a very predictable twist, I was disappointed by that. But the first like 3/4 of it was great. So this is about a very, very old woman who is reliving and recounting her life as she is preparing to die or really move on to the next thing. This is another book that's very much literary science fiction. The SF aspects of long life, kind of uploading your consciousness so that you don't really die, you just continue on to the next thing, and then kind of the crystal technology taking over the world, the kind of alternate history things going on with nuclear war and everything. That is very science fictional, and it's in the background, but it's also woven very pleasantly into the actual story, and you can see the impact that those things have on the life that this woman is recounting, and I thought that that was so interesting. And then we come to the slightly cliche bit near the end that I predicted from the beginning, and it disappointed me so much because I felt like the whole climax of the book was about that twist, but because I already saw it coming from the very beginning, it was just flat. And I had this moment where I was like, really? Really? You did that? That just felt a little bit lazy. Maybe this is me being kind of picky, but it is what it is. This one I did enjoy reading. I do think it's a very interesting winner of the award. It's worth reading now. And it does talk about life and what it means to live for a really long time and to reflect on these momentous things that affected your life and kind of summing that up by the end. And whether you choose to die, to have the natural end to a human life, or if you choose to go on in a completely different way. And the last book that I read for this project is He, She, and It by Marge Piercy. This book is also published under the title Body of Glass, which I think is its UK title, so you'll see that on a lot of lists rather than He, She, and It. I'm going to talk about this in its own standalone video because kind of weighing the pros and cons of the book and what I have to say about it, it might get kind of lengthy. I would categorize this as both feminist science fiction and cyberpunk. And I enjoyed the type of novel that it is. I enjoyed what it was talking about, but I think a good way of summarizing my feelings on this is saying that I think that when this was published in 1991, it was a very good book to read, a very important book to read, especially as feminist SF. But 30 years later, it's easy to see how far we've progressed in these topics and our thinking on these things, and this book doesn't seem nearly as relevant anymore. But like I said, I will talk more about this in a separate video. And that is everything. I have finished reading books for this project. I know some people will ask, yes, I plan on doing a favorites video where I talk about my favorite books that I read that won this award and the ones that I would actually recommend reading, because there are some that I don't think you should bother with. I'm looking forward to doing that video because it will give me a reason to talk about some books that I probably haven't even mentioned in a couple of years. And yeah, because I actually have enjoyed reading books for this. This last batch has just been the dregs, let's say. So with that, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back to talk to you again soon, and until then, bye.